So I'm here with Nicholas, and you interned in Amazon.
I did.
And, so you had some interesting cultural adjustments that you had to make in order to fit into the company. Can you share a couple of stories about that experience?
Okay, so what was challenging for me in Amazon was understanding the difference between company culture and country general differences between Colombia and the US working environment. Why? Because if it's company specific, you are not supposed to know it, so you can ask. But when it's country specific, those are things that you are supposed to bring along. And apart from that, people expect you to know it, so they are not explaining all these steps, and they don't even know that you don't know these steps. So I saw this both in language and also in general ways of communicating with people, asking for appointments or asking for help. In particular, in Amazon, it's very intense from the very beginning. You need to get to understand the company in 4 weeks, and then you start producing in the next 8 weeks. But you're a little bit on your own. For the first 4 weeks, they give you some names to contact. They give a quick introduction to the team. But after that, you have to look for the appointments. You have to understand what you need to learn, and then get the people to teach.
So it sounds like there's certain industries more structured and less structured. It sounds like you have a somewhat less structured one where where the answer is with other people.
Exactly.
And then you had to go out and go find those people. So how do you?
Exactly. So what was the challenge? You had two types of meetings to get to the answers. One is very structured appointments. You go into a system that they have, and you schedule an appointment. First, you send an email, very polite email, introducing yourself and telling them that you need a meeting. And there's also a very particular culture on these emails. First, you send an introductory email. You tell who's your boss, and you say that you want an appointment. If they're very friendly, they will answer very quickly. But if not, you don't get the answer quickly, and you don't have time. So you have to send a second email. That I always phrase like, I'm following up on the last email I sent you this week, so they feel a little bit ashamed of not answering you, and then you get the appointment. But that, for example, is very American. It's not that common in Colombia, so I had to learn how to schedule these appointments. Because in Colombia, you use the phone much more than the email for doing these appointments. And it's more personal. So you would get to know the person you're asking the appointment, and your boss would get you introduced to that person, and then you're on your own. But here, it's no introduction. You send the email from the beginning. So that was tough, but that I got really quickly. The second part is you have small questions that do not deserve a whole appointment, but it's like everyday things on how you do the computer or how do you access this information. And those are much shorter meetings that you don't schedule. You have to go and interrupt people. But the challenge is that here you don't know the people you have to ask this information, and people work very concentrated on their own in their computers. So you have to go and interrupt them in a very disruptive way.
Yeah.
And you want to do that the most subtle way, because they don't have to help you. It's only if they want.
Yeah.
So that was a slower process, and you start trying to get the people, to get to know the people. And one of the challenges is that lunch is not a space where you can get to know the people that normally you would have in Latin American countries. In lunch, you get to know the team, and then you can ask questions during lunch, or here people have lunch in front of the computer. So you really have to go and interrupt them and be very concrete on your question. And sometimes you can use email, but also think the questions very specifically, which questions you need them to answer, because you have 5 to 10 minutes. It's very small windows of opportunity, and you have to have good questions, because if not, they won't start helping you much more.
All that stuff actually sounds very familiar, because it's like, and speaking as an American, if somebody has a question, they can feel free to set up a half an hour meeting with me. An hour, that sounds a little too much for a new person. But then half an hour, but then meeting with this person, and I want to know what this person wants within the first 3 to 5 minutes. And if I don't, this person is not telling me what they want, I'm starting getting fidgety.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
Exactly. So, but at the same time, understanding this made me try to prepare myself very well for these interviews. But it was a challenge, because you only have a week in the company. You still don't know where the internet is, and you already need to be prepared for these interviews. So I was postponing them a little bit, getting prepared for them. And at the same time, they expect you to go to these first interviews unprepared but quickly. Like, start contacting people quickly and getting information. which was also, it took me a little bit of time to understand that you go to these interviews. The first one you won't understand anything. The second one you understand a little bit more, and each time you understand a little bit more. My strategy was different. It worked for me, but it's risky because they expect you to start showing results very quickly. I have a more steep curve. I go slower at the beginning, getting all the questions like right, and then I start ramping up really quickly and I start producing. But it's a strategy
It's a valid one because you may or may not, asking questions when you're ignorant. It's tricky because you don't want to seem too ignorant. You want to prepare a little bit so that you can ask intelligent questions so the other person doesn't know this person.
I agree, but then in Amazon it's a little bit strange because people don't expect that so much. Although they expect you to be intelligent from the beginning, so it's you have to choose which strategy to follow.
Yeah.
However, it was a fascinating process, like learning all this internal culture in the company and how to manage it. By the 6th week, I was completely comfortable. I was the middle.
That's a good.
But it was challenging. For example, one particular thing, they expect you to program a lot to get information, and they have a very specific. It's Oracle, but it's a very specific program to them, because the databases are far away, and you have to start asking questions from the very very beginning. And if you don't do that, you will get caught up in the middle because you don't have the data. So it's tricky. There has to be a very precise networking to get all the pieces together to get the help that you need.
Yeah, there's one. It reminds me of one thing, which is I remember even as an American when I went on an internship, I actually spent the work day, which isn't really that long, doing work. But then I had to go home, and just kind of try to figure out what it is that happened all that day, and then figure out what am I going to do the next day and the next day to kind of sympathize.
That helps. That helps. For me, it was challenging in the sense that I had to work a lot at the end to catch up from a slower curve at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because it took me a while to understand the process and start putting the pieces together. If you do that from the beginning and you start asking the questions, where are you going, and the other thing that is very important in the US is managing expectations. Like you under promise and over deliver. That's like the key result. And I think it's not that strong in Latin America. Like you have to perform over the top.
Yeah.
But people will understand from the beginning that you are ignorant of the process, and they will help you a little bit to get to your answers. Here they won't help you too much, but they expect you to get to the answers very, very quickly, at least in Amazon, in an internship. So you should be asking these questions, but I was so lost at the beginning because the question they asked for me was so broad that even if I went home and tried to think what I was doing, it took me a while to really understand where I was going.
Wow, sounds like a pretty interesting challenge for an international student.
It was fascinating. It was fascinating. Yeah. Best experience. I learned a lot in the internship, and I think I did a very good job from the feedback I got from my bosses. Mm-hmm. But culturally, it's a challenge to understand these small, subtle differences, but very deep, and which you don't notice until you're in the workforce, trying to do the job.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for sharing that.
Thank you very much.